Joining us is Senator Ted Cruz from the great state of Texas. Senator, great to have you. We appreciate it. And we wish you were actually here with us.
Well, Sean, it's great to be with you. I'll tell you, I'm glad I'm not in Chicago. We're seeing the images. You're showing the images of angry protesters, of violent pro-Hamas, anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, Marxist, America-hating radicals, and that's just the delegates in the convention, not even the protesters outside. It is a scary and it is a frightening thing that we're watching. And I got to say, the most ominous words I heard just a minute ago, it was Gavin Newsom saying that what happens in California is the future. I pray to God that's not right, because California is so much on the wrong track. And the Democrats are promising to bring the same chaos, the same crime, the same misery, the same people fleeing California because they cannot make ends meet. That's what the Democrats are promising to bring to the whole country.
You know, we watched this, and I've been kind of on the same page as Newt Gingrich as it relates to, you know, if this becomes an issue-oriented campaign, if it becomes about let's decriminalize illegal immigration, for example, an issue that you've been facing down in Texas in a big way, if it becomes about free housing and health care and education and free college education, according to Tim Walz, for illegal immigrants. If it becomes about law and order, we've gone over extensively their record as it relates to what happened in the summer of 2020 and the rioting in Minneapolis and also all across the country. And Kamala Harris, you know, her support of those that were rioting. If it comes about inflation and the economy and Americans here that she wants would blow up the filibuster and pass the Green New Deal, $93 trillion. That's not capitalism any longer, which is the greatest wealth-producing system ever. By the way, I see the police now seem to be moving towards the protesters as this confrontation is about to maybe hit ahead. We're going to keep our eye on it. If it becomes about those issues, energy, no fracking, no drilling, if it becomes about foreign policy, I think that this country would move in a very different direction. But 70 to 80% of these things that they stand for, most Americans don't know about yet, Senator. How do you bypass that?
Well, Sean, you're exactly right. This election has to be about the issues. And if it's about the issues, we win. If it's about the disaster of Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, the failures of their policy agenda, we win. If it's about inflation that is hurting working families across this country, we win. If it's about the chaos at the southern border, the worst illegal immigration in our nation's history, 11.5 million illegal immigrants, if that's what this race is about, we win. If it's about the disaster of foreign policy, the Democrats abandoning Israel, the Democrats giving $100 billion to Iran as they fund anti-Israel, anti-American terrorists, if that's what it's about, we win. And that's why the Democrats don't want to talk about any of that. They're counting on the press just to paint Kamala Harris as to turn her into a modern-day saint. It's why they don't let her talk. It's why she doesn't do media interviews. It's why she doesn't answer questions. It's why she just reads from a teleprompter, because they want to make this all a warm, fuzzy, happy days are here again election. And they also want to argue, as they're convinced, that Donald Trump is the devil. They don't want to talk about the success of the record of President Trump, of the record low unemployment, of the safety, of the secure border, of the peace and prosperity, of the Abraham Accords, peace breaking out across the world. They don't want to talk about any of that. They just want to demonize and distract. And we've got just over 80 days to make sure the American people are focused on the real issues that impact families in Texas and impact families all across the country.
What do you make of what's happening? You know, for example, in the summer of 2020, they had to support those people that were rioting because that was a big part of their base. Now they're dealing with, you know, we see it in the streets tonight in a confrontation with police tonight. They're dealing with probably the same radical base, but they don't want to alienate them. They want their votes. And so that will put them in a position to do what? What, to just ignore it and tell us like the 574 riots that killed dozens of Americans and injured thousands of cops and created hundreds of billions in property damage were mostly peaceful? Is that what they're going to tell us?
Look, I think that's exactly what they're going to tell us. We all remember when CNN reported with a building that was lit up in flames and they described it as a mostly peaceful protest. The media is the
Senator, if I may interrupt you for 1 second.
They're committed to lying. Yeah.
Let's just dip in real quick. Chuck Schumer is on stage. One of the people responsible for pushing out Joe Biden. Let's just listen in briefly.
Friends, we're here to talk about one thing, tomorrow, and building a better tomorrow for all Americans. This November, we can choose a brighter, a fairer, a freer future, or we can relive the dark night of Trump's American carnage. Only one candidate will move America forward, Kamala Harris.
All right, Senator Schumer, the majority leader in the U.S. Senate. Senator Cruz, let me give you your last opportunity to give you the last word here.
Look, this is the radical Democrat Party. Kamala Harris is the most radical presidential nominee in our nation's history with a major party. Tim Walz is the most radical vice presidential nominee. By the way, my Democrat opponent, Colin Allred, agrees with Kamala Harris and Tim Walz on absolutely everything. He's up in Chicago celebrating their open border, their disastrous campaigns. My opponent's doing the same thing as Kamala Harris, hiding in the basement, not answering questions, but raising millions and millions of dollars because Chuck Schumer, the man speaking, has made clear I'm his #1 target in the country. And Schumer and Soros are spending millions trying to beat me here in Texas. So I want to encourage folks listening, come to our website. It's tedcruz.org. Come and contribute. Help us stand and fight to defend Texas and defend this country, because the forces that want to turn America into California, they are flooding Texas with cash. I need your help. I need you to come to tedcruz.org. Give $25, $50, $100. Stand up and fight. Stand up and fight to support Donald Trump. Stand up and fight to support me. And let's save this country. Let's pull it back from these radicals and Marxists who are trying to destroy the country we love so much.
All right, Senator Cruz, thank you for joining us. It does look like there is a little bit of a retreat from some of these protesters, but you can see the police line is still holding. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.